Hello and welcome back to the Reapers. So today we're doing the third in our 3 videos about testing as best we can the maximum sustained lateral turn rate of the fighters basically in DCS, and today we're doing the heavy fighters. That's the F-15C, the Su-27 and the Su-33. We believe the J-11 is just going to be exactly the same as the Su-27 or near enough to not worth doing it, so we're not going to bother with the J11. Now there's loads of variables and constants and stuff we've had to do to set this experiment up. If you want to know how we're doing the experiment, go to video 1. If you want to find that, search in YouTube Grim Reapers how to test turn rate, and that should come up with it. Okay, I'm just going to go on now and do the test for the F-15 and show you in DCS. Then, without the camera on, I'll do the Su-27 and the Su-33. Then we're going to meet in TAC view again, and we're going to go through and analyse the results and see if we can find the maximum sustained turn rate for the various planes. So let's get the F-15 on a go. So we're going to start off at about 300 knots, which is the lowest the envelope we think we'll be able to find. Our maximum turn rate. Okay, we're going to be on the deck. I'm expecting the maximum turn rate to be about 450 knots. Now, we're not going to get the absolute true maximum turn rate, because to do that we're going to need to pull 9G plus, and we can't do that because we'll pass out. So it's the maximum turn rate, if you like, including the weakness of the driver. So 300 knots, and then we're going to slowly ease out the turn, and we're going to work our way slowly up to 500 knots, which we think will be the upper side of the envelope. It's 320. 330, we're on full power. Later on when we're faster we probably won't be able to sustain full power. 340, 350, let's sustain that for a little bit. Eke it up to 360. 370. There will be small peaks and deviations where I've put extra backstick in, so we'll have to factor that out when we look at the TAC view. 380. 390. 400. Halfway through, 410. 420. 430. 440. 450. 460. I reckon we'll be peaking about now, peaking our turn rate. 470. 470. Beginning to black out now. We're going to start having to think about coming off full power now. And you can see from 470 to 500 I couldn't sustain because I was blacking out, so it'll probably ease off there. Right, I'm going to go and do the 2 flankers now without showing you, and then we will meet you in TAC view. Right, welcome back. So we're now in the TAC view. What we're going to do next is take the take the measurement if you like, take the results. This bit is a bit tedious, so if you would have a short attention span, then just go to the end of the video to watch the conclusion. But what I'm going to do is basically watch the fighters spinning around in circles and monitor the turn rate here, which is at the bottom. Now it will do small peaks because obviously I'm human and I have little fluctuations in the sticks, so we have to negate those peaks and find out what the best sustained rate was. So let's send him on his way. Better put it back down to normal time. So we start at 300 knots. Now predictions. We're starting with the F-15C. It has a kind of body and a wing shape similar. In fact, the whole plane I just find similar. It's shaped to the MiG-29. The shape of the wings, the shape of the elevons, etc. And the thrust to weight ratio seems to be fairly similar as well. So I think it's going to have similar results to the MiG-29 from the light fighter test that we did, which was that it peaked around 450 knots TAS, and I think it peaked at 21 degrees per second. I should mention that I did a bit better with these heavy fighters than I did with the light fighters. I found it a bit difficult with the light fighters, and I don't know whether it's because these heavy fighters are FC3 planes, just a bit easier to fly, or I'm not sure, but I managed to keep the speeds much more stable with these heavy fighters. So it might mean I have to go and do the light fighters again, I'm not sure, we'll see. Anyway, so starting at 300 knots or thereabouts. What are we sustaining? 19. Okay, that's a pretty good start for a big, heavy, thunder chunky fighter. 18, 17, 19, 18, 17, 18, 19, 17. The turn radius is starting to increase, as you can see, as the speed goes up. The G at the moment, we're stuck on about 5.7. We can't pull the 9G. You literally can't pull that amount of G at that speed. The speed is just too low. So what that's telling us is that we can't get our highest peak turn rate yet. We're likely to see the peak turn rate when we're getting up to the higher G, probably 8.3, something like that. Technically, it will be at 9G, but I can't fly at 9G because I'm pretty much blacked out. So it's not really, yeah, it's not something I could do in combat, really. 19, we're up to 19 now, up to 360 knots TAS. 17, 18, 19. 19, yeah, sustaining 19. 370 knots now. You see the radius getting ever larger. Up to 6.2 G, 6.5 G, 19. Not as impressive as I thought this plane would be. It is struggling compared to, say, the Hornet. What I don't want to see is the Hornet be the best, because I want this to be the best. You can see it's a good test. Now, if you saw the light fighter video, you see the circles weren't concentric. They were a bit all over the place, and that's because I had a harder time controlling the... because what I'm doing is I'm trying to modulate the speed to ever so slightly eke it out very, very, very slowly over about 10 minutes or something. And you can see there's beautiful concentric circles here in the F-15, which shows you that I am doing it right. Doing a splendid job on the F-15. The light fighters, the Mirage and the Hornet, I was struggling, and so the circles kind of became non-concentric and therefore slightly erroneous results. But anyway, we're up to 7G now. 7G, 400 knots, and I'm disappointed. I'm only seeing peaking 19. Come on, F-15. Remember, this is a big heavy fighter. It carries a lot of gas, and we're on 50% gas, remember? It's disappointing. 420. Come on, F-15. You can do better than this. 430. Still the same. We're 19 is the highest attained. We're peaking on 20 there. Look, come on. Let's get to 20 at least. You big oaf of a fighter. 20. No, 19. 19.5. And that is where I think I'm going to see our maximum turn rate. G is going at low 8. We're only sustaining 19 at low 8 G. Come on, let's see 20 at least. Just over 450 knots TAS. Lovely concentric circles. Go away, Chaos. 8G. 470 knots TAS. and I'm going to be blacking out now. You can't sustain low 8s. Basically, your pilot is essentially blacking out at this point. 480 knots. Low 8 Gs again. No. So I'm going to do it 500 knots, and it's slowing down now. It's less turn rate because I'm having to back off the throttle because the G is getting too high at this speed. Right, not what I was expecting. Really poor performance for the F-15. We touched on 20s there, but I don't think we can call that sustained. We did do plenty of sustain throughout the experiment, so I'm not really sure what to say. Do we say it's the lowest speed where we can sustain 19, or because it didn't peak at 19, it constantly peaked through 19 through the whole experiment. Let's see back how far we were doing. 19. We do 19. We're doing 19. We were sustaining. We could sustain 19 thereabouts. 350 to 450. Let me just jot that down. 350 to 450 TAS, 19 degrees of turn rate. So it's a little bit disappointing. What do I attribute it to? So it's 2 degrees less than the MiG-29 overall per second. I attribute it because it's got a big belly of gas, and I think we're going to see the same problem with the flanker. Remember, when they do the real tests with the real aircraft, they do it with negligible fuel, so lower fuel, which will obviously increase the turn rate. And I wouldn't be surprised if they did it with a stripped down version of the plane with less avionics and stuff as well. So I don't want to compare these too much with the real life F-15 where you might see 21 degrees or something turn rate, because I don't think they're combat equipped planes that they do it with. Certainly not combat equipped fuel. Right, anyway, that is what it is. I couldn't have done that experiment any better. It was, look at those circles, they were pretty much perfect. So that is just as good as I can get it in an F-15 with that fuel load. Right, so next thing, we're going to look for our next plane. Stand by. So next we're on to a flanker A Su-27. Now, I just hope I did my kilometres to miles an hour knots conversion right here, otherwise this is going to be very embarrassing. So, in we go. Let's see if we can get concentric circle on this one. It probably won't be as good as the F-15. The speedo works in tens of clicks rather than individual clicks, so I found it a little bit harder. Right, again, so let's talk about the plane. Predictions. I got the last one wrong, so let's try this one. That looks more like a Hornet body to me. Now it's got the these long leading edge root wing extensions. A bit like a Hornet, and it's kind of got, the wing is somewhere between F-15 and Hornet. I think it's longer, wider wingspan, more like the Hornet, slightly straighter. And the Hornet did well between 350 knots and 420 TAS. So I expect this is going to be peak kind of between 350 and 420 like the Hornet. Let's see if we're right. Again, however, it's got a very heavy belly of fuel. It's got 50% gas, and in a Su-27, that is the most out of any of the fighters, including the F-15. So it might turn out to be just too heavy in this configuration to impress. That might be how it is. Obviously, when they recorded Farnborough, when this came to Farnborough in the UK for the first time, in the early 90s, late 80s, early 90s, they set a record of 22.5 degrees turn rate at 400 knots or whatever it was, but that was a display aircraft, remember, with negligible fuel and probably stripped out avionics, so we're just not going to see that with a combat aircraft. Anyway, we're too slow at the moment. We're 280 TAS. It looks like I got my kilometres to knots wrong, which is just typical. So we're going to do just how it is, I guess. Slowly ramping it up. This will take a while. I spent a lot of time. You see, the circles aren't quite as good as the F-15. I attribute that to my speedo. It works in tens of knots. Now when you're trying to get the knots perfect, that makes it really hard to do because it'll suddenly switch from 290 to 300 and then back again. You can't really modulate the throttle as well as you can. Right, experiment starts now. 300 knots, 17 degrees turn rate. Disappointing. Seems less than the F-15 at the moment. Again, remember that heavy belly of fuel. But in reality, that's what you're going to be fighting with. Your 50% gas, probably. So, you know, the experiment is based on a combat aircraft. Alpha's really high. Why is that alpha so high? I forgot to check the alpha of the F-15. So I haven't really got much to say about that. Speeding up, we're up to 5G. Very slowly creeping up, so I took a long time on this experiment, and that's good. It means we get plenty of time to analyse. It means there's not much stick movement to add error into the experiment, so pretty good. Height is acceptable. Come on, flanker, let's see something impressive. 17 degree, up to 350 TAS. Mid fives in the G now. We're up to 18, so we're slowly creeping up now. Maybe not. Ease off the stick a little there. 370 knots now. A disappointed 17 and a half. We're up to sustained 6G now. Now here's something I have to mention. I'm not a flanker pilot, so I don't know much about it. But it wouldn't let me pull high G. It seemed to be the fly-by-wire, the equivalent of the fly-by-wire, seemed to be stopping me pull high G. That may limit the turn rate, but that's what it is. That's the aeroplane at the end of the day. So it may turn out we don't get above 17. Yeah, it's limited me to 6G. Look, it won't let me pull G in this plane. 400 knots. I should be able to. No, we're going higher. We should be able to pull up to 8G, I would have thought it would let me. 18 sustained turn rate now. What was the F-15? Was 19. And that had a good broad spectrum. 410 knots. 17 degrees. 6.5 G. Now I should be putting more G at this speed, I would have thought. 6.7, high 6 Gs now. Oh, I've given up. Too early. I must have got my kilometres conversion wrong. What a knobhead, I only went up to 440. So I've got my kilometres wrong, so I'm going to have to go and add a tiny bit of experiment in there to... Okay, let's just deal with that for now. That peaked at 18 at 400 knots. Su-27, 400 knots, TAS, 18. So let's go look for the Su-33 now. Okay, Su-33 predictions. It should just be a flanker, but worse. Basically, it's 2 tons heavier, I think. It's got some little winglets at the front, but that won't add much lift. And you're looking for lift. You're not looking for pitch authority. You've got more pitch authority than you can ever need in those big elevons they've got. So those winglets at the front won't really help with pitch authority, I don't think. You're looking for wing size, wing loading here, and tiny little winglets aren't going to add anything. Not 2 tons worth, I don't think. So what I think we'll see is a slightly bad flanker. Anyway, let's let him go. Experiment's about to start. Experiment starting. 300 knots. 4G, 15 degrees, 16 degrees. Pretty decent circles. 15 degrees. I think the land flanker was doing higher than 15 degrees here. Kicked out the circle by accident. 330, 14, 15 degrees. 350 knots, 15 to 16 degrees, 15 degrees. Big old thunder chunky of a plane this is. 370 knots, 15 degrees. Yeah, just like we predicted it would be. It's just a slow, heavy flanker. Therefore, it just can't do that turn rate. Struggling, 16 degrees, 390. So the Su-27 was about to peak here at 400. Let's see what this bird peaks at. 15, 16 degrees. Oh dearie me. It's a bit bad. What did the flanker get? 18. I haven't seen above 16 yet. 400 sustained, 16, 15. Or 20, 16. Wee, 430. 15, 16. Just over 6G. 16. 15. 15. Yeah, it was getting worse. It was getting worse there, if anything. Up to 430. That's about the same. And we got the experiment again up to about 430, 440. So it's pretty pants. So 16 was the highest, and what did we achieve that at? We achieved it really 300 all the way to 430. Su-33, that was 350, I think I just said, didn't I? 430, 16 degrees. At least we got that prediction right. Right, I better go and quickly remeasure the two Sus from 430 to 500 knots. Although I don't think we're going to see any better. I think they're just too heavy for this. Right, stand by, be back in a bit. Right, sorry about that, but I'm back now. I just re-recorded the Su-27 and the Su-33. I know this is taking longer than we hoped, but let's just get it done. So we'll just skip that forward a little bit. Right, so this is where we left off from. This is the new run. Su-27 half fuel, TAS 430, and we've got 18 degrees. What did we get before that? We got oh yeah, 18 degrees. So that's exactly where we're expecting to leave off. 7G, sorry, off U2. So speed is going to slowly increase up to 440 knots. 18, it's holding very steady at 18. Looking like it's going to be good circles. Down on the G a bit, 17. Just settling down. Speed's increasing now. 440 at 17 degrees. 450 at 17 degrees per second. 7G. Now, at this point, the F-15 is doing over 8G, but for some reason, the Su-27 is limiting me to 7G. If anyone knows what it's doing that, I don't know. Now, I'm aware you can override the fly-by-wire system, but I don't think it's something you'd actually do in a real sustained turn, because you just seem to lose control of the plane when you do it. So, whatever this limiter is doing, it appears to be part and parcel of the plane. 7.2G. 17, 18 degrees turn. For 70 knots. 7.3 G, 17 degrees turn. and we're slowing. Our turn rate is slowing down as we get higher now. So 470, starting to slow down. Maybe. Yep, 17 degrees. 490, 17 degrees, 7.5 G. So the F-15 was doing 8.5 G here. Because it's less limited. And we're getting higher, 520, and it's going down, 16. Yep. Okay. So what did we get from our experiment last time? We got 400 is its peak at 18. Well, let's see, what happened after 400? So 400 to 430 seemed to be its peak. 400 to 430. 430, 18 degrees. That's disappointing. I really thought the flanker would do well. So we'll have a look at that in the analysis in a bit. Right, and lastly, we've got the second half of the C flanker. There he is. Send him on his way. It's 19 at the moment, but I think that's just peaking because I'm slowing down, so that's not sustained. Still not sustained. Now it's sustained at 17, 16. Okay, in fact we're slow. We might as well speed up because we've already covered all this. So 430 is where we left off. 430. There we go. 16 degrees. Sustained. .440, 15 degrees, 16 degrees. Decent circles. .15 degrees. Radius is widening, 450, 460, 450 knots, down to 15 degrees. So we're starting to slow down now, the plane's struggling. Only at 6.2 G, really limited in this plane for some reason, don't know why. For 70 knots, 15 degrees. For 80 knots, 16 degrees. .500 knots. 16 degrees, 7.7 low Gs. And that's as far as I think we'll put the experiment. So I went all the way up to 500 knots at 16 degrees. Let's just check what we got previously. Yep, 16 degrees. So basically 350 knots to 500 TAS is 16 degrees, and we couldn't get it any higher than that. Simple as that. Right, I'm going to go and put all these results in one screen, and then we'll have a little chat. Stand by. Right, so here we have the final results of the experiment. F-15C achieved a standing sustained max lateral turn rate of 19 degrees per second at in a decent band of 350 to 450 knots TAS. We managed to sustain that 19 degrees per second. So what we learned, well, first of all, that's pretty mediocre. I would have thought the F-15 could do more than 19. I thought it was doing more like low 20s, so that's put my theory out. Also, there's the theory that it can only turn at high speed. I mean, this experiment's a real experiment. For DCS, it showed that it could maintain 19 degrees at maximum turn rate with half fuel at 350 to 450 band. So you can turn in a relatively slow fight with an F-15 at 19 degrees. Can't really argue against it. That's what we saw. Su-27, very disappointing, 18 degrees per second in a band of 400 to 430 knots TAS. So it actually struggles at slower speeds compared to the F-15, which I didn't think was possible, and it turns slower than the F-15. Now, I'm not sure if it was a restriction in the fly-by-wire or if it was just fuel load. Most of this, what we're going to look at today, is going to be due to the weight of the plane, mainly the fuel load. These heavy fighters, because they're air superiority fighters, F-15 and the two Sukhois, they carry a lot more fuel, and so due to the limit of the experiment, which is that we put 50% gas, they carry a lot more fuel. They've got a much heavier gross weight. So that's probably why these guys, but that is realistic. That's what you're going to be fighting in a real dogfight, so it makes this relevant. Okay. Su-33, just like we thought, a couple of degrees slower. It has a large band, but it's a couple of degrees slower than the Su-27. In fact, you might as well just call it useless. In a realistic fuel load situation, in a band of 350 to 500 knots, you're going to peak at a max sustained turn rate of 16 degrees per second. Never fight in a Su-33. And I thought that because every time I've been in a Su-33, I've lost immediately. So it just shows why. The Mirage 2000, I don't fly it a lot, and I don't know much about it. It had it peaked at 20 degrees per second at 380 knots TAS, and it did a decent 19 degrees per second spread among pretty much the rest of the speed, the rest of the band, from kind of 300 up to 500, peaking at 380. So make of that what you will. It's worse than I thought. Why is that? Is it because of the wing shape? Is it because of the lack of power to weight ratio? What do you guys think? Let's discuss that. Next is the MiG-29 Golf. I chose that because it's in knots and it's easier for me to drive that way. Also, it's the lightest. It's lighter than the Sierra model, so why not use it? It peaked at 450 knots TAS. It did well over the bandwidth of 350 to 450. It did about 19 to 20 degrees, but it peaked to 21 degrees at 450. That is just where it was happiest, the MiG-29, due to its, its aerodynamics. So that's pretty good. That's the second highest here, but only at that band, only at that 450. And then we move on to the king of turning, it appears. FA-18C peaked at 420 knots at 22 degrees per second. It's the highest out of everything, with half fuel load and no burn rate. It had a decent band from kind of 350 up to 420 of 20 degrees plus. That's more than any of the heavy fighters got anywhere. So it's needless to say, if you want to be in a dogfight, take an FA-18. You're going to turn better. I didn't know that. I thought the F-15 and the F-18 were going to be about the same overall. However, it's 3 degrees less. As simple as that. And it explains why I've been losing every time I fought a bloody Hornet. So Cap is going to switch to the F-18 now. It's going to take the move and switch to the F-18 because it just, there's the proof of the pudding. Can't argue with it. Seems to be the best fighter. Let's also discuss in the comments, how do these compare to real life measurements? Now, like with Spain, these are taken slightly different to real life measurements in that we've had a fully equipped fighter in terms of avionic weight, etc., and we're using half fuel load, so it's going to be less than the real fighters are measured. But what I'm trying to say is, this follow the real pattern of the real fighters? Is the F-18 the best in real life, or is the Flanker the best in real life, or is the MiG the best in real life, or is the F-15 the best in real life? Let's get some facts and figures bouncing about and see what we think. Yeah, so that's so the experiment. The reason I did this is to find which fighters do which max turn rate at which speed, and we've got it right there. And if you want to have the king of the fighters, it is the FA-18C. Ideally at 420 knots at 22 degrees per second. Not much more I can say on that. I hope you enjoyed that. I think that was worth doing. Hopefully they won't go about and change the models now. Every time they introduce a new fighter, I'll add it to this running total, and we can discuss. We've also got acceleration. I've done this for accelerations. If you want that, look in drag races. The drag race section on YouTube. I've drag raced everything against everything basically. Right, hope you enjoyed that, and we'll see you later.